Part 47. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 461. When Chu Qing Huang entered the palace gate, she saw Fu Kang carrying Chu Tianyan and walking quickly. She paused. Fu Kang let go of Chu Tianyan, walked to Chu Qing Huang, and said with his head down, "The dark chamber failed in its duty." "We'll talk about whether the dark chamber failed in its duty later." Chu Qing Huang raised her eyes slightly and looked at the officers and guards inside and outside the palace. "It looks very lively here." The officers and soldiers were sent by the Dali Temple, and the guards were naturally sent by Chu Tianyan to fight against the Dali Temple. Chu Tianyan suppressed his anger and knelt down to salute, "Your Majesty. From now on, no one in the Prince of Jin's mansion shall move." Chu Qing Huang did not let him get up, but said lightly, "Lord Pan. Your Majesty is here. Take people to search." Chu Qing Huang ordered. "Fu Kang, you assist Lord Pan." "Yes." Chu Tianyan was shocked and looked up at Chu Qing Huang. "Your Majesty is obedient, and I wonder what your Majesty wants to search for." "I have obtained evidence of your rebellion, so I naturally have to search." Chu Qing Huang looked at him coldly. "Why? Is the Prince of Jin questioning my decision?" Chu Tianyan clenched his hands. "Your Majesty dare not. But even if your Majesty wants me to die, you should let me die with a clear mind." "Don't worry, I will let you know soon." Pan Yun led the officers and soldiers of the Dali Temple to the inner house. Fu Kang is proficient in finding secret passages. The two of them joined forces. As long as there is something fishy in Chu Tianyan's mansion, it will soon be exposed. The guards brought a chair, and Chu Qing Huang sat there waiting. Everyone in the Prince of Jin's mansion knelt down to wait with her. Time passed by little by little. Chu Qing Huang's eyes fell on a group of maids in the palace, and she saw the woman who was over 30 years old. Her clothes were different from those of other maids. From her hairstyle and dress, it was obvious that she had a higher status than other maids. Chu Qing Huang raised her hand. "Yuan Bao. Your Majesty. Call her over." Yuan Bao followed her line of sight and nodded respectfully, "Yes." So he walked up to Ade and said lightly, "What's your name?" Ade lowered her head and replied respectfully, "Your servant Ade." "Your Majesty asked you to go over." Ade stood up, walked around the group of people kneeling in front of her, walked to a place not far from Chu Qing Huang and knelt down, silent and calm, and did not look like the others who were in awe. Chu Qing Huang stared at her for a moment, then slowly said, "Ade." "Yes." Chu Qing Huang's lips curled up slightly, her expression as indifferent as snow. "I have heard your name more than once, and today is our official meeting." Ade had already anticipated her own end. "I dare not." "You are very powerful." Chu Qing Huang leaned on the chair, her voice was light. "You have helped Chu Tianyan to stir up trouble again and again, and used your little ability to treat poison to instigate him to do this and that, but you have never succeeded once. I can tell you responsibly that you have to take a large part of the credit for Chu Tianyan's current situation." Ade's face turned pale. "I dare not." "Don't dare." Chu Qing Huang raised his eyebrows, "but the facts prove that you dare." Ade knelt down, speechless. "You used to belong to the late Queen Mother. The late Queen Mother gave you to Chu Tianyan, which was also a sign of her love for this grandson." Chu Qing Huang sighed. "What a pity, I think this is the stupidest move the Queen Mother has made." Chu Tianyan's expression changed slightly, and he said in a hard voice, "Your Majesty, did you come here to humiliate me today?" "Come here to humiliate you?" Chu Qing Huang turned his head and looked at him casually, with a mocking arc at the corner of his lips. "Chu Tianyan, are you worthy?" Chu Tianyan's face flushed. "If you hadn't been stubborn and done all kinds of secret and vicious things all day long, I wouldn't even bother to look at you." Chu Qing Huang said coldly, "You could have lived to the end of your life and enjoyed a lifetime of wealth and glory if you had been law-abiding, but you just couldn't be content with the status quo and had to make trouble. Do you think I'm dead?" Chu Tianyan's face was pale and blue, and he sneered. Your Majesty, a Dali temple officer ran over and knelt on one knee. Lord Pan and Lord Fukang found more than 30 imprisoned girls in the dungeon of the palace. After the words fell, Chu Tianyan's face turned pale, and the blood on his face instantly faded away, and the whole person collapsed to the ground powerlessly. Chu Qinghuang's expression suddenly turned cold, and the look in his eyes when he looked at Chu Tianyan was cold. What else do you have to say now? Chu Tianyan couldn't say a word, his expression was frozen, and his face was full of despair. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 462. Bring all those women here. Chu Qinghuang stood up and ordered angrily, Chu Xuanyi, seal off the Prince of Jin's mansion immediately. Arrest all the people and put Chu Tianyan in a cell alone. Yes. Chu Xuanyi said, come here. The guards with swords came quickly and waited for orders. Capture all the people in the Prince of Jin's mansion. Yes. Not long after, the girls cried in fear. Chu Qinghuang looked up and saw a group of girls in disheveled clothes being brought over by the officers and soldiers of the Dali temple. They were all beautiful and at the age of delicate flowers, but they looked haggard, pale, and panicked, like a group of frightened birds. Fu Kang walked up to Chu Qinghuang and reported, I just asked, the Prince of Jin plans to take action tonight, control these women with drugs, send them to the brothels to auction their virginity and send them to the residences of major officials as gifts, in order to control the officials in the court. As for the means and purpose of controlling the officials in the court, it is self-evident. Chu Qinghuang said coldly, Lord Pan. I am here. The Dali Temple and the Ministry of Justice will interrogate. I want to know all the conspiracy plans of Chu Tianyan. Chu Qinghuang's voice was cold and full of murderous aura. Take these girls to Changming Palace, I have something to ask them. Yes. Chu Qinghuang said coldly, interrogate tonight, I want to know all the truth tomorrow morning. I obey your order. Return to the palace. Chu Qinghuang turned around and was about to leave, and a cold light came unexpectedly. Chu Xuanyi was about to make a move, but Fu Kang reacted faster and kicked Ade, who attacked Chu Qinghuang, away. Bang! Ade's body hit the wall hard, and she spurted out a mouthful of blood, and died instantly. Chu Tianyan saw this, his pupils suddenly shrank, and then he didn't know what he thought of, and he breathed a sigh of relief quietly. Lord Pan reacted the most, and hurriedly walked to Ade to try her breath, and confirmed that she was dead, and his face changed immediately. This Ade is an important witness and accomplice. It doesn't matter. Chu Qinghuang glanced at her lightly, turned around and walked out of the prince's mansion. Without this witness, we can still find out the truth. Lord Pan stood up and saw that the guards had controlled Chu Tianyan, and he suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. It doesn't matter, rescuing these girls is the top priority. If the Prince of Jin wants to get rid of the crime, he has to explain the existence of these girls, but he can't explain it clearly. Since Her Majesty intends to ask questions in person, it is enough to show that she values this matter. How could she let him go easily? After ordering the officers and soldiers to clean up the aftermath, Pan Yun quickly left the prince's mansion and followed him into the palace. You don't have to be afraid. Lord Pan looked at the young girls. His voice was majestic but full of comfort. The situation is urgent. I only had time to report to His Majesty and bring people to rescue you. I don't know the specific situation yet. When you come to His Majesty, you will tell him everything about your experience. Don't panic. As long as you tell the truth, you can go home soon. The girls looked at each other when they heard this, and their eyes were still a little panicked and helpless after being frightened. However, Lord Pan's words did comfort them. The girls lowered their heads and followed him to the direction of the palace without saying a word. After entering the inner city gate, Chu Tianyan and the people in charge of the Jing County Prince's mansion were taken to the Ministry of Justice prison, and the innocent girls were taken to Changming Palace. Chu Qinghuang was thinking all the way, it was beyond my expectation that Chu Tianyan could quietly get more than 30 girls into the dungeon of the Prince of Jin's mansion. Even if the secret cabinet and the guards failed to notice at the same time, this matter is still very abnormal. Master is right. I just found a secret passage in the dungeon of the Prince of Jin's mansion. Secret passage, Chu Qinghuang tilted his head to look at him. Have you sent someone to check where the secret passage leads to? I have already checked. Chu Qinghuang hummed, the Prince of Jin's mansion actually has a secret passage. I am afraid that even my father doesn't know about this, so the secret passage should have existed for a long time. Maybe it was not necessarily made by Chu Tianyan. Chu Tianyan may have just discovered it accidentally, and then had an idea to use it. After all, the prince's mansion has not only lived in a generation of princes. Who made the secret passage can be checked later. The most urgent task is to find out the origins of those girls. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 463. Returning to Changming Palace, Yuan Bao presented a cup of tea. Chu Qinghuang took the cup and said calmly, "Let them wait outside first. When 3 of them come in at a time, I will ask them in groups." Yes. Yuan Bao walked out, first called the 3 girls in front, and said, "Your Majesty, you can answer whatever you ask. You are not allowed to lie. Every question must be answered truthfully." The 3 girls nodded uneasily in agreement. Entering the palace, he knelt down and saluted in a panic. Whether the etiquette was standard or not obviously didn't matter at this time. "Whose daughter are you?" Chu Qinghuang asked. The first girl was about 13 or 14 years old, with a pale face. Caoer, a folk girl, is the daughter of the Zhang family in the west of the city. Her father likes to gamble. She lost a lot of money gambling, and she still can't pay off her debts. Sold the civilian girl into Hongyu Tower. Chu Qinghuang frowned. "When did you sell it?" Last month." "What about after selling into Hongyu building?" "My mother asked the folk girl to pick up the guests, but the folk girl refused to obey. She locked the folk girl in the firewood shed and did not give her food or water. She was hungry for 2 days and 2 nights. Later, my mother said, 'I want to give the daughter of a commoner to the prince, and from now on I will wear gold and silver with him, without having to show up in public.' You just agreed." The young girl shook her head hastily. "The girl has never been able to do it. My mother had people knock the girl out. After she woke up, she went to a dungeon." Chu Qinghuang understood and turned his eyes slightly. "Where are you?" "Folk girls were also sold into Hongyu Tower." The second girl looked calmer, with a pale face. "My mother died young, and my stepmother gave birth to 2 younger sisters and a younger brother. There were many children in the family, and the stepmother he said he couldn't afford to raise so many children, so he sold the daughter into Hongyu Tower. Since you can't raise children, why don't you get married?" Chu Qinghuang asked lightly. "I think you should have reached the age of leaving the court." With a folk girl's background, the matchmaker looks for people who are well matched. The betrothal gift given by her husband's family is not as much as the silver she would get from selling her body. The stepmother can get a full 20 taels of silver by selling the folk girl into the Hongyu Tower. "Sold you into a brothel for 20 taels of silver." Chu Qinghuang's expression turned cold. "Your father doesn't care." The girl shook her head slightly. Father doesn't care, the stepmother makes the decision in everything. Chu Qing Huang was silent for a moment and asked, how long have you been in Hangyu Tower? 3 months. No pickup. No, the girl lowered her head. The madam just lets the girls learn to dance. If they don't learn well, they will be beaten, and sometimes they will go hungry. Chu Qing Huang didn't ask any more questions, and turned to look at the third girl. This girl was younger, at most 12 years old, and timid. Her eyes turned red with fear before she even asked. Chu Qing Huang asked a few questions briefly and learned that she was also sold into the Red Mansion by her family. Although the girl was young, she had been sold into the Red Mansion for more than a year. He is still at an age where he does not understand the world, but he has already encountered suffering early on. Chu Qing Huang had a sullen face and ordered Yuan Bao to pass the message to other girls to come in. After some inquiries, Chu Qing Huang learned that these girls were about the same age, 2 or 3 years apart, and the oldest was only 15. Except for a few orphans, the others were all willingly sold by their families. There has never been any abduction, trafficking or kidnapping. This is probably because Chu Tianyan is cautious in doing things. After all, if a daughter of any family is missing or kidnapped, he will definitely report it to the officials. This will alert the government and the court. No one will pursue the daughter who is willing to sell it, so as to avoid causing unrest. Necessary trouble. Using a brothel as a cover can also avoid attracting attention. Fortunately, because of Chu Tianyan's special requirements and plans, most of these girls are still virgins and have not lost their innocence. For a woman who values chastity more than her life, this is a blessing among misfortunes. Chu Qing Huang closed his eyes and remained silent. Auction or give to officials. Thinking of the plan that Chu Tianyan planned to implement, Chu Qing Huang's delicate and noble brows were filled with chills, and his voice was as cold as ice. Fukang. Exist. Go and bring the madam of Hangyu Tower, I want to live, Chu Qing Huang ordered. It doesn't matter if you break your legs or feet, as long as you can speak. Yes, Fukang accepted the order and left. Chu Qing Huang stood up and walked to the window, her eyebrows dyed with frost filled with evil spirits. Through the window, she looked thoughtfully at the girls who were taken down by Yuan Bao for temporary placement. After being silent for a while, she turned and went to the imperial study room. Chu Suans, Wen Zhan, and Yun Heng had been working in the imperial study. In the morning, after Chu Qing Huang went to court, he would discuss matters with the ministers in the imperial study. The three of them listened. After noon, the three of them were responsible for completing the tasks assigned by Chu Qing Huang, organizing files, recording and sorting out important events that happened in the court, reciting the regulations of various ministries, and checking past cases. But today, Chu Qing Huang gave them a new task. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 464. I have recently discovered that there are still many imperfections in the laws of Ziki that need improvement. Each of the three of you will draft a statement. You can write down any suggestions on legislative changes, Chu Qing Huang said lightly. Focus on the crime of privately buying and selling people. From now on, whenever there is a crime of selling wives, daughters, or sons to pay off debts, except for those who have committed major crimes and are consigned to a lowly status, at any other time, a woman will be forcibly sent to a brothel regardless of her will. Those who stick to the fence will also be punished. Yes. Trading people is just one of them. Taking advantage of this revision of the law, you can think more about what else needs to be improved. Tomorrow morning, you can discuss this matter with the ministers. Chu Suans and the other two agreed. Chu Qinghuang looked at Wen Zhan and asked calmly, Wen Li seems to have something to do with this case. Have you noticed anything unusual during this time? I only know that he often frequents brothels and casinos. He was a famous dandy in the past. During this time, he has become more and more serious. Wen Zhan frowned and lowered his head and said, I originally thought that it was just because his father was the minister of the Ministry of Revenue that he led him with more indulgent capital. I didn't think of anything else. Please forgive me for any oversight. In fact, he really didn't think much about it, because Wen Li has always liked to hang out with his friends in shopping malls and casinos instead of doing his job. He used to like to suppress bastards and take pleasure in bullying Wen Zhan. However, since Wen Li suffered a loss in front of Chu Qinghuang, his behavior has been restrained. Now that Wen Zhan has become a minister in front of Her Majesty the Queen, he naturally does not dare to be too presumptuous, so he often goes out and sets foot on fireworks almost every night. Land. For such a playboy, who would have thought that he would secretly conspire with Chu Tianyan to murder a young girl? You will be responsible for the interrogation of Wen Li. Chu Qinghuang said, I want to know the result tomorrow morning. Yes. It's getting late, you go back first. Chu Qinghuang explained, when Wen Zhan interrogates Wen Li, you two should use your brains more. Yes. Time flies when people get busy. After the three people left, Chu Qinghuang stood alone in the imperial study room for a while. What happened tonight made her feel extremely bad. It's not certain whether Chu Tianyan's conspiracy can be implemented smoothly, but if someone hadn't tipped it off to the minister of Dali Temple, these little girls would have been killed. Just one step too late and more than 30 little girls would have been ruined. As the night grew darker outside, Chu Qinghuang returned to Changming Palace and sat alone on the brocade couch, meditating. Not long after, Fukang brought the madam of Hongyu Tower over. The dead of night is when the brothels are bustling with business, but tonight the Jinjun prince's mansion was investigated. Probably all the brothels in the imperial city were shocked. The land of 3 religions and 9 streams has always been a mixed bag, and there are many eyes and ears, so gossip spreads quickly, especially since the affairs of Jinjun prince's mansion also involve Hongyu Tower. When Fukang went to fetch someone, the madam was so frightened that he almost lost his mind. When he entered the palace and saw Her Majesty the Queen, his face turned pale and his whole body was shaking with fear. Chu Qinghuang waved her hand, gag her mouth and give her 50 lashes to loosen her skin. The madam's face turned pale, and before she could say anything, the guards gagged her and dragged her out. Fukang stood in front of the couch and looked at Chu Qinghuang. Sensitively aware that she was in a bad mood, he silently knelt down in front of the couch and said, Eng has neglected his duties. I will not be able to escape the responsibility of my subordinates. Master, please punish me. Chu Qinghuang leaned on the brocade couch and said with a hint of weariness in his voice, It's not your fault, I also neglected my duty. Fukang pursed his lips, his heart filled with self-blame. He still didn't do well enough. If he could be more thoughtful and powerful, the master wouldn't be angry because of these things. When we have time another day, let's discuss the manpower arrangement of the Dark Pavilion, system improvements, and the cruel training methods that also need to be improved. Chu Qinghuang said lightly, although those in power have never regarded shadow guards and dead soldiers as human beings, look, most of them just regard them as a handy tool, but they are human beings, and many years of training require a lot of manpower and financial resources. They cannot belittle one life at will, and they must minimize the loss of a small number of people. Fukang nodded, yes. The person who reported the secret to the minister of Dali Temple this time has great achievements. Once found out, I will definitely reward you heavily. My subordinates will go check it out right now. There's no rush. Chu Qinghuang stopped him, it's not too late to check again tomorrow. After all, Chu Tianyan has been arrested. No matter who the person who reported the secret is, there is no danger of being silenced for the time being. Yes. The sound of whipping outside stopped, and after a while, the guard said respectfully, "Your Majesty, the 50 lashes have been completed." Chu Qing Huang stood up and walked out, standing at the door of the palace, watching the old bastard being kneeled on the bluestone under the light, his voice extremely cold. "The 33 girls brought out from the dungeon of Jinjun Prince's mansion today are all from Hangyu Tower." The old bastard was so frightened after being beaten that he knelt on the ground and trembled. Yes, yes, but these are not my ideas. It was Prince Jin who threatened me. Please be aware of it, please be aware of it." Chu Qinghuang's voice was cold. "Tell me everything about King Jin's plan, and I will spare your life." After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 465. Prince, there is a girl named Ade in the prince's mansion. She gave the prince an idea. The madam brought out a tray, not daring to hide a word. Ade has medicine. As long as the medicine is used to control these girls, they can be obedient. After some training, they can become charming and pitiful, then, send them to the officials and seduce them with beauty. In this way, we can learn about the trends in the court in time, and we can also hold the officials' handles. When the time is right, we can let the officials do things for the prince. I heard that if they don't obey, they will be blinded. Chu Qinghuang said coldly, "Why do you want to blind their eyes?" The fat body of the madam trembled. This. Don't want to say it." Chu Qinghuang frowned and said coldly, "Pull him over and continue beating him." "Her Majesty, spare me," the old procuress screamed in fear and begged for mercy. I'll tell you. It's to satisfy the fetishes of some special guests." Chu Qinghuang's face darkened. "What fetish?" "The princes and nobles have some fetishes in private. They like to control the bodies of girls and play a lot of tricks to force them to do things that are difficult to talk about. However, many girls are unwilling to agree to it because of shame. If you blind them, they can't see anything." As she finished her words, Chu Qinghuang's eyebrows were covered with frost, and a strong cold and murderous aura gradually emerged in her eyes. Chu Qinghuang thought of these evil beasts and angrily ordered, "Take them away and beat them." "Please forgive me, Your Majesty. I was forced to do this. Please show me mercy." "Show me mercy?" Chu Qinghuang looked at her expressionlessly. "When you attacked those young girls who were not well versed in the world, did you ever think of showing me mercy?" "Your Majesty, you deserve to die." "You deserve to die," the madam kowtowed and begged for mercy. "Your Majesty, I am willing to atone for my crime. Please forgive me." Not far away, Chu Xuanyi led the imperial guards away. "Come, approach, bow and say, 'Your Majesty.' Is there any progress?" "Yes," Chu Xuanyi said, "the Ministry of Justice is cooperating with Lord Pan in the interrogation. Wen Li and Han Yi have confessed most of what they have said. The Prince of Jin is still unwilling to say anything. If he is subjected to all the 18 tortures, he will say everything." Chu Qinghuang said coldly. His eyes fell on the madam. "How do you plan to atone for your crime?" Hearing Wen Li's name, the madam knew that there was a reason to reduce her guilt. Wen Li, the son of Minister Wen, also participated in the plan of the Prince of Jin. She spoke very quickly, as if she was afraid that she would be pulled down and whipped if she spoke a word slowly. The Prince of Jin wanted to drag the Minister of the Ministry of Revenue into the water, so he took the initiative to approach Master Wen. Master Wen is a playboy and a frequent visitor to Hangyu Tower. He became friends with the Prince of Jin. Many of those girls were schemed by Master Wen. Everything I said is true. I beg Your Majesty to see clearly. Wen Li is a recognized dandy. How did he scheme against those girls? In addition to visiting brothels, Master Wen often goes to casinos. Those girls who were sold by their parents were because their fathers and brothers lost money in gambling in the casino. They lost a lot of money and had their fingers chopped off if they couldn't pay back the money. Master Wen coerced them to sell them. They sold their daughters and sisters, so. Chu Qinghuang turned to look at Chu Xuanyi. Starting tomorrow, focus on rectifying the major gambling houses in the imperial city and arrange for the guards to patrol. I obey your order. Do you have the indentures of those women? In order to make it easier for the Prince of Jin to control them, the indentures have all been handed over to the Prince of Jin, the old procurer said with a trembling voice. The Prince of Jin bought the girls from the bitch for 500 taels each. That's really good. Chu Qinghuang was extremely angry, but her tone seemed calm instead, as Minister Wen said, in broad daylight, there are so many daring people who do such vicious and dirty things under my nose. Chu Xuanyi was silent and lowered his eyebrows. Since you have shown that you can make up for your crime with merit, I will spare your death penalty. Take her away and put her in the prison of the Ministry of Justice. Starve her for 3 days. Yes. Chu Qinghuang was still angry and said coldly, if Chu Tianyan is stubborn, let Pan Yun torture her. I don't believe how tough he is. Chu Xuanyi hesitated, but doctors cannot be punished. Chu Tianyan has committed such a heinous crime. Will I still keep his title of prince? Chu Qinghuang said coldly, from now on, he has been demoted to a commoner. Beat him however you want, whip, branding iron, clamp, use them all on him. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article feed, placement, below article feed, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 466. Chu Xuanyi heard that she was being cruel, and his heart shuddered slightly. He bowed his head and accepted the order, then quickly turned around and left. Tonight is destined to be another sleepless night. The ministers in the court were afraid that they would have trouble sleeping and eating. What Chu Tianyan did had nothing to do with them. Regardless of whether his ambition was still alive or not, all the officials in the court had drawn clear boundaries for him and kept away from those who could. I absolutely dare not have anything to do with him. But visiting brothels is a hobby shared by many officials in the DPRK. Some people do have special hobbies in private. This case involves the Hongyu Tower. All officials who have been to the Hongyu Tower are like ants on a hot pot, fearing that the enraged queen will offend them. Which can range from dismissal from office and loss of titles to loss of life at worst, and also implicates the whole family. I was too indulgent to them in the past. Chu Qinghuang walked to the window and sat down, holding up a cup of tea. The duty of an official is to work for the people and the king. It is not to go to a brothel and drink wine, and occasionally let them if you indulge. They really dare not treat people as human beings. Although he couldn't beat everyone to death with one stroke, Chu Qinghuang knew clearly what kind of virtue the men in the world were. There are definitely very few officials in the court who can maintain their integrity as pure as jade. Most of them not only have wives and concubines in their homes, but they also frequently go to the fireworks display to hug each other. They have long forgotten the etiquette, justice, and shame of scholars. It went into the dog's belly. Master, calm down. Fukang knelt beside her. Now that the Western Qi state is relatively stable, many things have made a good start, and the territory is being guarded. Master can use some time to rectify the officials' style issue. It's really time to deal with it seriously. Chu Qinghuang raised his hand and rubbed the center of his brow. I was really angry with Chu Tianyan tonight. I won't know if I don't investigate. Only after I investigate will I know what kind of chaos they have become in private. As he spoke, he sneered coldly. Nowadays, these greedy officials don't dare to be blatantly greedy, but they can go to brothels to vent their indulgence, take human life seriously, and destroy countless girls for their shameful habits. If I continue to indulge them, he is a foolish king. Fu Kang stood up and stood aside. He raised his hand to press her temples and eyebrows. His voice was calm and comforting. Master, don't be angry. Punish him as you want. King Jin deserves to die. Just let him die. Killing one person will serve as a warning to others, and being too kind will not have the effect of deterring people. Chu Qing Huang said nothing. Ruling a country requires thunderous means. The master's kindness to the evildoers is cruelty to the victims. Fu Kang said, as long as the law is violated, no matter who it is, they will be severely punished. You are right, being kind to the evil people is cruel to the victims. Chu Qing Huang closed her eyes, her voice was cold and without warmth. I am too kind to them. Fu Kang didn't speak any more. He lowered his eyebrows and concentrated on massaging her with his long fingers, but he couldn't help thinking in his heart, what kind of punishment should be used to treat Chu Tianyin? The master has to deal with government affairs so hard every day, and he can finally take a breather, but there has to be someone who is looking for death to hinder the master and prevent him from trying all the 18 tortures of the Ministry of Justice. Since he wanted to blind those women, he might as well treat them the same way as others and let them experience what it feels like to be blind first. Master Fu Kang's eyes fell on Chu Qing Huang. I'm going to check on the progress of the interrogation between the criminal department and Dali Temple. Master, please take a nap first. Chu Qing Huang hummed, go ahead, I'll be alone for a while. Yes, Fu Kang agreed and explained carefully, the defense outside Changming Palace is tight. It's already late at night. Master, don't go out anymore. If you have anything to do, we'll talk about it tomorrow morning. Chu Qing Huang was silent for a moment, thinking about the meaning of his words, and suddenly she felt better. Yeah. Fu Kang turned and left. Chu Qing Huang turned to look out the window. The palace lanterns were dimly lit, and the young man's strong and tall body quickly disappeared from sight, leaving only silence. She thought silently, the wolf cub's tone of voice seemed to be a little different from before, well, vaguely more domineering. Maybe he didn't realize it himself. Tisk, it would be nice to be more domineering while being gentle, she thought, but she couldn't let him be too domineering. She still preferred the docile wolf cub. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 467. This is a special and important case. The interrogation was over time late at night, and the three parties including the Minister of Punishment, the Minister of Dali Temple, and the Imperial Guard were interrogated together. The person being interrogated also had a distinguished status. Of course, the distinguished status was limited to before tonight. Later, the leader of the Dark Pavilion also came. Fu Kang walked into the prison and looked at Chu Tianyin, whose limbs were firmly fixed on the torture frame. His body was still intact for the time being, and there was no sign of torture. He turned around and saw sitting on the left and right sides the Minister of Punishment and the Minister of Dali Temple. Next to the two adults was a document writing a confession. Chu Xuanyi stood beside Master Pan with a cold expression. Several jailers holding long whips stood by quietly. The atmosphere in the cell was a bit depressing, and Fu Kang's appearance made the atmosphere even more depressing. Master Fu Kang Master Pan stood up and said, "What orders does your majesty have?" "No," Fu Kang said in a cold voice, "I just came to see how the trial went." Master Pan looked embarrassed. The prince refuses to recruit. He has been demoted to a commoner and is no longer a county king. Fu Kang frowned. Master Pan doesn't know how to use torture to extract confessions, or does Master Shangshu not understand? The two adults looked at each other. Chu Xuanyi said calmly, the sinner has committed many evil deeds and has been deprived of his title as a county king. He can be punished. Chu Xuanyi, Chu Tianyan seemed to be suddenly stimulated and struggled violently, making the iron chain rattle. You lackey! Are you a man who is willing to succumb to a female prostitute? This is simply a shame. This man's face has disgraced all the ancestors of the royal family. Let me tell you, Chu Qinghuang is not of the Chu family at all. Ah! The screams suddenly started, making people's hearts tremble. Then they saw Chu Tianyan's mouth full of blood and water splattering. Fukang actually cut off his tongue with a sword. There was sudden silence in the cell. Everyone in the criminal department and Dali Temple changed their expressions and looked at Fukang with pale faces. You are still talking nonsense when you are about to die. Do you really think that the prison of the Ministry of Punishment is just a decoration? Fukang looked at Chu Tianyan with a cold expression, as if he were looking at a dead person. Since this mouth can't speak, there is no need to keep the tongue. It's on. Fu, Master Fukang. Master Pen, calm down. How can we interrogate him if you cut out his tongue? Fukang frowned. Without the tongue, we can't interrogate. We can interrogate him, but he has to talk. You just write down the accusations and have him sign them, Fukang said. There's no need to waste time. Everyone. There is no such rule. Traditionally, even if the prisoner surrendered, the prisoner had to be subdued and frightened, so that he could plead guilty on his own. This was the first time I heard that he could be imprisoned directly. This is no longer a sign of surrender, but a blatant deception, right? Your Majesty has almost completed the interrogation and obtained evidence of the crime. Fukang did not intend to smear Her Majesty the Queen's reputation, so he could not patiently explain. Chu Tianyan's purpose is to use those girls to seduce the officials of the court. After controlling them for a long time, he can let the officials of the DPRK and the central government be used by him to seize the country. The Minister of Punishment was shocked, planning to seize the country. You heard it right, Fukang said. His purpose was to seize the country, but his methods were too dirty and he actually extended his dirty hands to the innocent girl. The Madam of Hongyu Tower has made it clear about this matter. The innocent girl also confirmed this. Master Pan's expression was quite calm. Because he had seen the secret report in advance, which indeed said that Chu Tianyan was plotting something evil and intended to use these innocent women to control officials in the DPRK and China. As for who his target officials were, it was still unknown. But what is certain is that it must be the central official who holds the power. Your Majesty just said that he can be given whips, soldering irons, and sticks. Why haven't you taken action yet? Fukang looked at Chu Xuanyi. Commander Chu can't bear to take action. Chu Xuanyi glanced at him silently. It wasn't that he couldn't bear it, it was just. Hit him. Fukang walked to the blazing fire and picked up the red-hot iron. This kind of thing has dehumanized, no torture is too much to use on him. The Minister of Punishment and Mr. Pen have been in office over the years, and have used all kinds of severe punishments on prisoners, but it is really rare for Fukang to have such a calm attitude in inflicting torture. Chu Xuanyi was silent for a moment, then raised his hand to signal to the jailer. The next moment, the sound of swishing whips was heard, accompanied by Chu Tianyan's howling, which made people silent for a moment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 468. Without his tongue, Chu Tianyan could only howl. In addition to suffering, he obviously still had a lot to say, but he could no longer say it. He wanted to tell everyone that Chu Qinghuang was not a bloodline of the Chu royal family, but a little bastard born to the Supreme Emperor's bastard. He was a thief with impure blood. As long as Chu Xuanyi knew this fact, he would definitely feel rebellious. Even if he gets nothing, he still wants to make Chu Qinghuang uneasy. However, his intention has been revealed by Fukang. Fukang will not give him a chance to disturb people's hearts. Not only will he not be allowed to speak, he will no longer even have the ability to write. The long whip swung down with the sound of wind, and soon tore his clothes. Sharp pain swept through him. Chu Tianyan's face was pale and he was sweating. The mouth opened and blood flowed. The branding iron was branded on the body, right on a bloody mark that had torn the flesh. The sizzling sound of the flesh being burned was frightening, and the shrill and tragic screams almost shattered the eardrums of the adults present. Ah! 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 Master Pan swallowed his saliva and stood aside calmly, looking at the young man holding the soldering iron with a cold and calm expression, no emotion on his face, and no reaction at all to Chu Tianyan's shrill howl. He turned around, without a word he threw the soldering iron into the cold water. The sizzling sound of rapidly boiling cold water and the rising mist make people feel more intimidated. Chu Tianyan had passed out from the pain. The Minister of Punishment turned pale, and even the jailer couldn't bear to look at him. They are not afraid of these severe punishments. As ministers of the Ministry of Justice and jailers who often deal with prisoners, all kinds of torture are commonplace, but Fukang can make them feel cold all over. Has the confession been written? Fukang turned to look at the Minister of Punishment. He intended to commit rebellion, and the following committed the crime of killing an innocent girl. The method was vicious and cruel, and the crime cannot be pardoned. The Minister of Punishment gathered his composure and finally found his voice. You are the leader of the Dark Pavilion. The interrogation of prisoners tonight is the responsibility of our punishment department and Dali Temple. Master Shangshu Chu Xuanyi said calmly, he is the royal husband appointed by Her Majesty the Queen. What? The Minister of Punishment was stunned for a moment and looked at Fukang in disbelief. Master Pan and the jailer were also a little shocked. Her Majesty the Queen's appointed husband. As expected of the person Her Majesty the Queen likes, such ruthless methods can indeed intimidate the ministers. Putting aside the disrespectful attitude, does this count as a female evil god falling in love with another evil god? The Minister of Punishment said in confusion, so this Fukang was venting his anger on behalf of Her Majesty the Queen tonight? Or do you want to silence yourself? Fukang had no reaction to what Chu Xuanyi said. He glanced at the unconscious Chu Tianyan and said calmly, the night is still very long, you can continue. With that said, he turned around and walked out. In the huge cell, no one spoke for a while, and it was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. That. Mr. Pan took a deep breath and regained his consciousness. Wake up the guilty Chu Tianyan and continue the interrogation. Chu Xuanyi glanced at Chu Tianyan, then turned and left. The guards on duty all bowed silently when they saw him. Chu Xuanyi led a patrol. Everywhere in the palace was tightly guarded. No one dared to neglect their duties, whether it was day or night. Walking to Nanwumen, Chu Xuanyi saw his father. Xianyi King Rong saw his son perked up and hurriedly walked towards him. Before it's time to lock down the palace gate, I'll come over and ask if the matter about Wenli and Hanyi is true. Chu Xuanyi nodded, it's true. Is this, actually true? King Rong's face changed slightly, it's going crazy outside. Now this official is asking for a meeting, and now that official is asking for a meeting. I really can't stay at home, so I just came over to have a look. After a pause, he hesitated in a low voice, this matter shouldn't involve Xianyu, right? Chu Xuanyi frowned slightly, Xuanyu has been staying in the military camp, how could this matter involve him? Aren't you worried as a father? King Rong sighed, fortunately, Xianyu changed his ways early, otherwise he would not be able to escape this time. Chu Xuanyi was silent for a long time and then said, no, he doesn't have that many tricks. It's not that he can't do anything, but that he is simply a brainless person. He is easily instigated to do bad things. Who knows what some playboys have done in private? King Rong sighed, and the more he thought about it, the more he became afraid. No wonder the ancients said that a blessing in disguise is a blessing in disguise. This sentence is indeed wrong. Chu Xuanyi understood what he meant. It's nothing. Father, please go back and rest early. I won't go back tonight and will stay in the palace for my rotation. Prince Rong nodded. Be careful and don't get involved with those messy people. Our family is already noble enough and we don't need more interests. My son understands, father, don't worry. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 469. Fukang came out of the prison of the Ministry of Punishment and looked at the night. The sky was dark and dark, with layers of dark clouds. It would probably rain tomorrow. The weather has become warmer in February, but the temperature difference between day and night is large, and the nights are still cold. Fukang stood alone for a moment, considering whether to take a shower first. Taking an occasional cold shower during the season is actually nothing to him and will not have much impact on his body. But, what if the master is angry? Fukang struggled for a while, then turned around and walked towards Changming Palace. Her Majesty the Queen is not asleep yet, she is leaning against the window thinking about something. When you are alone in silence and no one disturbs you, it is easier to focus on things and your mind becomes clearer. After Fukang entered the palace, he stood at a distance and said, Master. Chu Qinghuang came to his senses and looked up, back. Yes, Fukang nodded, the smell in the prison of the criminal department is not very good. I'm going to take a bath and then come back to serve the master. Chu Qinghuang said, Go. Fukang took the clothes, turned and left. Chu Qinghuang stood up and walked to the bed in the inner hall, and said calmly, Yuanbao, what time is it now? Replying to your majesty, it's already 3 o'clock in the morning. Yuanbao replied respectfully, Your Majesty, it's time for you to go to bed. You have to get up early to go to court tomorrow morning. Chu Qinghuang's tone was careless, you should step back first. Yes. Chu Qinghuang waved his hand, everyone, get out. The palace people withdrew their eyebrows and lowered their eyes and retreated. In a blink of an eye, the palace returned to silence. Chu Qinghuang leaned on the bedside, thinking that even if he slept now, he wouldn't be able to sleep for long. Fortunately, I made up 2 hours in the afternoon, and so many things happened in the evening, so I didn't feel sleepy now. Chu Qinghuang raised her eyes and looked at the direction that Fukang had just left. She couldn't help but think that she was sitting in front of the bed waiting for someone. Does she look like a wife in an ordinary family waiting for her husband? Although her role is really different from that of an ordinary wife, this feeling is quite good. Sometimes I think of someone, sometimes I miss someone, and sometimes I wait for someone. The corners of Chu Qinghuang's lips rose, and she couldn't help but think of her original heroic ambitions. She didn't want to spend time with anyone, nor was she interested in indulging in tenderness and sweetness. She just wanted to gallop across the country, command the heroes, and let the world crawl at her feet. Galloping across the country and commanding the heroes, he could barely do it. However, things like tenderness and sweetness are obviously beyond the control of people. After all, no one can predict who they will meet in their lives. With her current status, it is not that she cannot enjoy the 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, and read all the beautiful men in the world. Only. Master Fukang walked into the inner hall, with his dark hair hanging down, carrying a bit of moisture that had not been completely wiped off. He looked sharp and restrained, and his eyebrows were delicate and gentle, like a beautiful man's version of a hibiscus. Yeah, more than half has passed, and the master can still sleep for 2 hours. He takes a shower alone very quickly, and he has already officially taken a shower this afternoon. Chu Qing Huang patted the inside of the bed. I don't feel sleepy at all. Help Kang to bed. Chu Qing Huang asked, how is Chu Tianyan? Fu Kang was silent for a moment and said truthfully, my subordinate cut out his tongue. Chu Qing Huang's expression paused. Why? Don't attack what you should, and talk nonsense when you shouldn't. Fu Kang pursed his lips. I think it's useless to keep his tongue. Chu Qing Huang looked at him steadily for a moment and nodded slowly. He is about to die anyway, so you can do whatever you want. For a person who always has evil thoughts to resort to tricks, not to mention cutting out his tongue, even if his limbs are disabled, his eyes are gouged, and his nose and ears are all cut off, it is not too much. Master, don't you blame me. What's your fault? Fu Kang said, my subordinate's methods are too cruel. Not being ruthless is not enough to rule the world. Chu Qing Huang said, is it possible that you still want to be a bodhisattva who cultivates his moral integrity? Fu Kang shook his head quickly. Chu Qing Huang spoke, and his voice sounded particularly calm and peaceful at night. I plan to rewrite the laws of Ziki in the next period of time, focusing on rectifying the style of officials, and rectifying the trafficking, mutilation, and torture of brothels, casinos, and other places of 3 religions and 9 streams. Daughters of ordinary people especially need to be protected from the bad behavior of young girls. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 470. Master has thought carefully. Most of those who served as officials in the imperial court studied hard for 10 years. Once they achieved fame, they were blessed with glory and splendor, married into the family with beautiful wives and concubines, and gave birth to a large number of legitimate children. The euphemistic name was the family prospered and the lintel shone brightly. Chu Qing Huang snorted coldly, with a mocking expression on his face. Beautiful women in the world are like trophies for men. In addition to a well-matched wife, there are not enough concubines. They drink wine and spend a lot of money in a brothel. To smile for Pomeranian, I also need to raise a few outhouses to show my strength as a man. Fu Kang was horrified. Master, please forgive me. Chu Qing Huang's voice paused slightly. Say. The crows in the world are as black as black. Although it is true, there are exceptions. Fu Kang narrowed his eyes and defended silently. There are also noble-minded people among scholars, who sit calmly in their arms and guard their bodies like jade. There are also dedicated people in power, although there are very few, such as Master. Chu Qing Huang was silent. Although I am not a scholar, I can guarantee that I will only be with my master in this life. I will never have a messy intercourse or concubine. If there are any, master, just break my legs. Chu Qing Huang looked at him for a moment, then reached out and touched his head. I'm not talking about you, I'm just talking about the most common phenomenon under the system. Yes. As for the phenomenon of officials having 3 wives and 4 concubines, I think we can put some restraints on them, at least not to allow them to indulge in sexual activities without a bottom line. Chu Qing Huang pondered. Rules are not only used to restrain officials, but also to restrain men in the world. Give women some status and respect. Fu Kang frowned and thought, in the early stages of establishing the rules, I'm afraid they won't have much effect. Let's take it slow, start with the officials first. Chu Qing Huang said, if the officials set an example, then the people below will gradually develop fear and restrain their own behavior. Fu Kang raised his eyes to look at her. My master will definitely become the most sage and unparalleled empress in the world, and will be famous for generations to come and be praised by future generations. Just as Chu Qing Huang was about to speak, Fu Kang hurriedly added, what I said was true, not to flatter the master. Yet Chu Qing Huang smiled faintly. Okay, let me lend you your good words. I hope I can be a queen with unparalleled sage and fame for generations to come. Master can definitely do it. Some things are easy to say but difficult to do. Chu Qinghuang sighed. For thousands of years, men have had the final say in this world, and the oppression and belittling of women has been engraved in their bones. How easy is it to change your habits? Fukang said, as long as the master is a daughter, he can still sit on the throne of the Emperor of Ziki. The reason why I can sit on the throne is not only as strong and capable as any other man, but also because I have the confidence of dongling power, which allows me to have no worries and no need to think about the consequences of anything I do. I can just do what I think I should do things to do. Chu Qinghuang smiled lightly, because I know that even if trouble does occur, my father will not sit idly by and do nothing. The imperial brother is my biggest supporter. Otherwise, under today's system where men are absolutely superior to women, a princess who is a daughter, even if she has the courage to think about things that ordinary people dare not think of, the obstacles she faces will definitely not be easy to overcome. In any case, the master is a role model for women in the world, and a king that men in the world look up to and obey. No matter how arrogant a man is, he can only kneel down in front of the master. Fukang insisted, even if there is no dongling, the master can still do it. Sitting on the throne of Ziki may take a little longer to plan, but the result is the same. Chu Qinghuang raised his eyebrows and looked at him deeply. I always knew you admired me, but I didn't expect you to admire me so much. The master is as unattainable as a god in the hearts of his subordinates. When Chu Qinghuang heard this, his expression was quite subtle. So, is your behavior about getting married to a god inappropriate? Is it considered blasphemous? Fukang was stunned and suddenly became quiet.